Welcome to the complete story of Final Fantasy XIV, Stormblood, the second expansion for Final Fantasy XIV. While it might sometimes be overshadowed by the glory of Heavensward and the acclaim of Shadowbringers, Stormblood's narrative is a powerful tale of resistance and freedom that deserves its place in the spotlight. I'm Peter from Birds of Play, and I invite you to join me on this journey. Remember to subscribe and click the bell to stay updated. But for now, let's dive into the epic saga of Stormblood. Brace yourself for a harrowing tale of tyranny and hard-earned liberation, so that you can stay with us every step of the way. At the Rising Stones, the Scions gather for a meeting of utmost importance, where Alphinaud explains that the Eorzean Alliance will not set foot in Gurabania until they have formally secured the consent and cooperation of the Alamegan opposition against the Empire. For this purpose, the Scions have been asked to act as intermediaries, taking advantage of Lyse's personal connection to the Resistance. Lyse embraces the role wholeheartedly, wanting nothing more than to see her homeland free of Imperial rule. Along with the Warrior of Light, she is joined by Alphinaud, Alisaie, Y'shtola, and Krile, as their allies Yugiri and Gosetsu return to their master in Doma to fight the Empire on a separate front. As they reach Gurabania, Lyse is starkly reminded of how Bailsa's wall cuts the land in two, with freedom on one side and tyranny on the other. Tyranny and the promise of a new beginning, one that can only be bought with flames and blood. They journey to Rhalgr's Reach, a sacred sanctuary revered by the sons and daughters of Ala-Mhigo, a fitting bastion for the Resistance. There they encounter the steadfast commander of the Resistance, Conrad Kemp. In the shadow of Rhalgr's imposing statue, they forge a precarious alliance, vowing to liberate Ala-Mhigo from the iron grip of the Gallian Empire. Yet, Conrad reveals the dire state of their cause. The Resistance is fractured, a splintered force of divided camps and uncertain loyalties. He pledges to seek unity among the factions, but cautions that time is against them, and not all will heed the call to arms. Adding to their woes, the devastating fallout of Ilbert's betrayal has left their ranks depleted, their seasoned warriors lost, replaced by a desperate ensemble of inexperienced recruits. Splitting up, Krile and Y'shtola opt to stay in Rhalgr's Reach and help at the infirmary. Alphinaud chooses to start resistance recruitment within the Scions, and the rest help with bolstering the camp alongside Conrad's top officers Mnago and Mifrid. Accompanied by Mnago, they update Rauban of the Immortal Flames on the dire state of the Resistance, which has only been worsened by the low morale following Ilbert's massacre. Pippin, the Vice Marshal of the Immortal Flames and Rauban's adopted son, suggest the Resistance must showcase resilience and secure a few minor victories against the Empire to reignite hope. To do so, they ambush an escort transporting prototype Magitech armor, and the Warrior of Light engages in battle with Imperial soldiers led by Grinewat, who feels like all his name days have come at once since he gets the chance to fight the Warrior of Light again after having suffered defeat at his hands before. However, when the fight intensifies and the prototype is destroyed, Grinewat cowardly flees, handing the Resistance a much-needed victory. This small triumph invigorates the campaign to reclaim Ala-Mhigo, and the group begins recruiting anew, starting with Lyse's hometown of Ala-Gana. At the royal palace of Ala-Mhigo, the arrival of the Viceroy and the Imperial Prince Xenos Igalvus is celebrated in a lavish display of splendor as he struts into the palace with the Gallian anthem sung in his honor. Seated upon his imposing throne, Xenos listens with cold detachment to reports from the region, including that of the ambush. Enraged by the cowardice and incompetence on display, he orders Grinewat's removal from the Legion and executes his commanding officer on the spot in cold blood. Frustration simmers within Xenos as he recalls his father's refusal to let him march on the wall after Shinryu's summoning. Seeking new thrills, Xenos therefore turns his gaze to the Resistance in Ala-Mhigo, eager to hunt them down like prey to satiate his hunger for blood. When he asks for suggestions, Fordola, a native Ala-Mhigan serving the Empire, steps forward, but is harshly rebuked by another commander on account of her low birth. However, Xenos, recognizing her fierce ambition, decides to entertain her proposal despite her lowly origins. Meanwhile, the Resistance plans a joint operation with Rauban to capture Castellum Valladina. While scouting the outpost with Pippin, they are caught off guard by explosions hailing from the direction of Ralgo's Reach. They rush back to find Fordola leading a brutal raid on the camp, and as they arrive too late, they witness her delivering a fatal blow to Mefrid. Lys, consumed by rage, attacks Fordola, but her strikes are effortlessly parried. Xenos himself then intervenes, desiring a duel, and with a single swing he knocks Lys aside. Y'shtola attempts to shield Lys with a barrier, but is grievously injured as Xenos shatters her defenses and slices her with his formidable blade. The Warrior of Light and the others arrive just in time to rescue Lys and a critically wounded Y'shtola. However, they find Xenos' power insurmountable, as even the Warrior of Light cannot overcome him. During their fierce clash, Xenos breaks his blade against the Warrior of Light, but unimpressed by the Resistance, departs the battlefield out of sheer boredom. In the aftermath of their crushing defeat, Conrad is engulfed by sorrow as he laments the loss of Mefrid, whom he had envisioned as a future leader. Disheartened, Conrad reveals the painful truth that the Skulls, Fordola's unit, are children of Alamegan dignitaries who were raised under the Empire's rule and are now loyal to their oppressors. As they contemplate their next move, Alphinaud proposes reigniting the revolution in Doma, who was previously crushed by Xenos. This strategy would compel Xenos to battle on two fronts, weakening his grip. Rauban agrees, seeing this as a pivotal chance to rebuild the Resistance stronger than ever. The spark of hope reignites, and the plan to turn the tide begins to take shape. For their perilous journey across the ocean to the far east, Tataru arranges transport with the captain of the Krakens in Limsa-Lominsa, leveraging secrets from the past. However, he can only ferry them as far as the city of Kugane. Before departing, Urianger presents Alisaie with a finely crafted rapier, hoping it will serve her well. On their voyage to Kugane, the group navigates to a sinister ship graveyard near a haunted prison, where they confront a malevolent siren determined to make this their final resting place. After a fierce battle, they defeat the siren and continue their journey, finally reaching the only port in Hingashi open to outsiders, Kugane, located across the Ruby Sea from Othard. Upon arrival, they ponder whether Yugiri and Gosetsu are still in the city, as they must find them. As they disembark, they are greeted by Hancock, a representative of the East Aldenard Trading Company, who is acting on behalf of Chairman Lolorito of Uldar. Although initially wary of him, Hancock begins to earn their trust, as he warns them of numerous Imperial spies lurking around. Hancock then briefs them on Kugane, noting the Sekisegumi, the formidable police force tasked with maintaining order. Passing the imposing Imperial embassy, they reach the company office, which Hancock offers them to use, along with his services, as a gesture of goodwill from Lolorito and as an apology for his master's role in the bloody banquet. Aware of their mission to find the Doman Liberation Front, Hancock confirms that Yugiri and Gosetsu did indeed arrive in Kugane earlier, giving them hope that they might yet catch up to them. Seeking information about their allies, Lys and the adventurer follow a lead from Gyoto, a fisherman of the Namazu catfish beastmen, despite Hancock's warnings about his trustworthiness. Living up to his reputation, Gyoto betrays them and attempts to sell them out to the Imperials. After a fierce battle, they defeat their enemies and capture Gyoto, but the commotion draws the unwanted attention of the Sekisegumi. Fortunately, Soroban, a member of the tortoise-like Kojin beastmen, helps them evade arrest. Back at the office, Soroban introduces himself as a part of the mercantile Blue Kojin, who are notably more hospitable than their red Kojin counterparts. Sensing a business opportunity, he offers his ship to help them cross the Ruby Sea. Under interrogation, Gyoto reveals he sold out Gosetsu to the Garleans. However, Gosetsu fought off the Imperials, but was later arrested by the police. When they reach the barracks to rescue him, they find that Gosetsu has already earned his freedom through trial by combat, winning 10 matches in a row. Gosetsu explains that he split from Yugiri to increase their chances of finding Lord Hien, the heir to the Doman throne. He also reveals that Xenos has installed a ruthless woman named Yotsuyu as the acting viceroy of the region, a particularly horrid woman who delights in torturing the citizens. Determined to aid the Doman Liberation Front, Alphinaud announces their intent to support their cause. Pleased by this news, Gosetsu offers to lead them to Yangsha, where Yugiri is based. Before crossing the Ruby Sea, Soroban reminds them of the price required by the pirate lords for safe passage. Tansui, the Confederacy's lieutenant, informs them that the price has tripled due to the looming threat of war. Their conversation is, however, abruptly interrupted by Imperials, who flagrantly refuse to pay, thereby provoking the Confederacy. Frustrated, Tansui admits the pirates are powerless, as the Red Kojin have sided with the Imperials. This powerlessness is further exacerbated by Yotsuyu's brutal treatment of Doman pirates, as Yotsuyu is currently keeping herself busy by menacing a nearby fishing village. Outraged, Gosetsu professes that he must aid the village. Moved by his determination, Tansui lets the group pass without paying the price, allowing them to reach Orthard and prepare for the coming battle. Arriving at the outskirts of the village, they witness Yotsuyu and Griniwat tormenting villagers on suspicion of betraying the Empire. To make them prove their loyalty, they force them to kill their own to save their families, with death as the only alternative. A man is even asked to slaughter his parents in cold blood, as they are too old to work, but when he can't comply, he is killed on the spot. To spare the villagers further agony, Gosetsu intervenes as he offers himself to Yotsuyu in order to relieve the plight of the people, if only momentarily. Yotsuyu accepts Gosetsu's gracious offer and captures him for interrogation. Meanwhile, the rest of the group follow Gosetsu's directions to the Confederacy headquarters. There they meet pirate Captain Rosho, who, though sympathetic to their plight, sees no advantage in provoking the Empire on their behalf at the moment. Determined to build goodwill, the Scions keenly observe the pirates' dire circumstances, sensing that their downfall is imminent, as the Red Kojin are already pursuing the Doman Confederates. Rosho acknowledges this grim reality and reluctantly concedes that paying a toll is preferable to being slaughtered in retaliation. Therefore, until the balance of power shifts, he opts for the path that offers the Confederacy a slim chance of survival. Upon hearing this, Alice boldly interjects and proposes they send a powerful message by depriving the Empire of Kojin support, wagering the pirates' allegiance if they succeed. Traveling to Tamamizu, the village of the Blue Kojin, they discover that the entire village is housed inside a giant bubble situated on the sea bed. There they are welcomed by Soroban, and after hearing about their mission, Soroban takes them to their leader. The elder listens intently and explains that the Kojin believe that their gods, the Kami, favor certain sacred vessels. These divine treasures are highly prized and worshipped by the Kojin, including the Red Kojin, who pursue these treasures while hiding their true faith from the Gallians. The elder reveals that to sever the Kojin's ties with the Empire, they must recover a missing divine treasure, the Yasakani no Magatama, one of the Kojin's 3 most sacred artifacts. To aid their quest, Soroban grants them the blessing of the sea, allowing them to breathe underwater, and arranges for undersea mounts to expedite their travel. While they strive to win the pirates' allegiance, Yotsuyu interrogates and tortures Gosetsu, though his iron will remains unbroken. Gosetsu taunts her, suggesting it must bring her great joy to exact revenge upon them as the orphan of Nayuri and the widow of Sashihai, Doma having failed her and led her to a miserable life. Aggravated, Yotsuyu stomps on his head, declaring that her appetite for their suffering is a bottomless abyss, utterly insatiable. She mocks Lord Kayan, the former ruler of Doma, whom Gosetsu had failed to protect. She then recounts Gosetsu's past, speaking of the samurai who would do anything to return to his master's side, even pledging his blade to his sworn enemies and slaying 1,000 men in the Empire's name. Gosetsu does not deny his sins, but refuses to be judged by her. Yotsuyu claims she does not seek to reproach him, but rather to praise him, recognizing him as a survivor, much like herself. She then demands to know the whereabouts of Lord Hien, Lord Kayan's successor, and heir to the throne of Doma, whom the Empire seeks to eliminate. After recovering the Yasakani no Magatama, the Kojin elder presents the Warrior of Light and his party with a ceremonial knife, granting them access to the Kojin's treasure vault. This vault holds relics of such immense value to the Red Kojin that they cherish them more than their very lives. Attacking the vault therefore compels every Red Kojin to abandon their task and rush to defend their treasure, losing the Empire's hold over the Ruby Sea and leaving it vulnerable to a Confederacy assault. The trio infiltrates the hidden vault, where the Yasakani no Magatama suddenly begins to resonate with the other two premier sacred treasures, summoning a Kami, who thanks the Warrior of Light for reuniting them. Overjoyed, the Kami chooses to celebrate with a battle, transforming into the Kojin's primal, the formidable swordsman Susanoo. After an epic clash amidst the tumultuous and sacred battlefield, the Warrior of Light manages to defeat Susanoo. Meanwhile, Soroban informs the Confederacy of their opportunity to strike back against the Red Kojin to liberate their captured allies and reclaim the sea for their own. Taking full advantage of this opening, Rasho makes good on his word and shows the Empire once and for all that the Ruby Sea does not belong to them. As Rasho and his men launch their attack, they manage to free Gosetsu, Yotsuyu having been unable to break him. Returning from his battle with Susanoo, the Warrior of Light and his allies see smoke, signaling the pirates' successful assault. After fighting off the Red Kojin, they then join the fray to find the pirates victorious, their victory rekindling the pirates' belief in a free Doma. As a result, the Confederacy pledges their aid to their cause. Having escaped, Yotsuyu and Grinuat slay some Red Kojin for failing to guard their post. They then turn their eye to the divine treasures the Red Kojin were guarding and take a blade of exquisite craftsmanship for themselves, believing they might be able to use it to make amends. Journeying to Yangsha, the once thriving heart of the rebellion, now gripped by fear under Yotsuyu's iron rule, the group arrives at the humble village of Namai, nestled near the fortified Doma castle, which looms behind an impenetrable magic barrier. Gosetsu, drawn by his fondness for the village's persimmons, approaches only to incite panic among the villagers. A young farmer named Ise steps forward, explaining that if the Imperials discovered Gosetsu, the wanted retainer of Lord Kayan, they would burn Namai to the ground without hesitation. Moreover, Gosetsu's presence serves as a painful reminder of their loved ones who perished fighting alongside him. Pressing onward, they arrive at the House of the Fierce, the headquarters of the Doman Liberation Front. There they are welcomed by Yugiri, now clad in a new attire. Relieved to see her Eosean allies, Yugiri reports having found Lord Heian in the Asim steppe. However, Heian did not return with her, insisting he would only come back if Doma was truly ready to rise against its oppressors. As such, he tasked Yugiri with gauging the true spirit of Doma, stating that he would be ready to fight for her if that was the will of the people. If not, however, he would offer up his own head if his people had resigned themselves to the fate their tyrants had allotted them. As they assist Yugiri in gauging the people's desire for freedom, they encounter a populace weary, frustrated, and disheartened by the endless resistance against the Empire. Survivors like Isse see no point in further suffering. To make matters worse, soldiers arrive, announcing that in retaliation for the Confederacy's attack on the Viceroy, villagers will now have to help defend the Empire as loyal subjects by working for its soldiers. Though Lise is eager to respond with violence, Yugiri urges patience, and, with the Warrior of Light, devises a plan to use sleeping blow darts and disguises to infiltrate the camp. Once there, they free the broken spirit prisoners, but the prisoners object to their rescue efforts as they've lost the will to fight after suffering so many losses. Yugiri's willful pride and willingness to keep on fighting is like salt in their wounds, but Yugiri promises that even if they will not do it themselves, she will continue to lay her life on the line to fight for their freedom. Spotting an Imperial airship, they soon learn that Xenos has returned to Doma for a surprise inspection with Yotsuyu by his side. Yugiri sees this as a golden opportunity to assassinate him, but the others warn her that underestimating Xenos could be catastrophic, and killing the Crown Prince would undoubtedly bring the Empire's full wrath upon Doma. Undeterred, and believing she can save many lives by taking one, Yugiri makes her move. However, Xenos easily parries her attack, his delight at the lingering hatred embodied by Yugiri quickly turning to disappointment due to how weak she is compared to him. The Warrior of Light arrives to support Yugiri, but Xenos, now wielding the Ame no Habakiri, a new sword gifted to him by Yotsuyu, effortlessly overpowers them. Despite the lopsided battle, the Warrior of Light manages to break a piece of Xenos' armor, impressing the prince. Xenos commands the Warrior of Light to survive and grow stronger, effortlessly deflecting another attack from Yugiri. Just as he moves to finish her, an arrow from Ise interrupts him as a mob of villagers stands defiantly against the seemingly invincible foe, proving that Doma's spirit remains unbroken. Alice and Gosetsu arrive to extract their comrades, escaping under the cover of a smokescreen as Xenos departs, mildly amused by their meager display of resistance. Afterwards, Yugiri expresses regret for her impulsive actions, while Alice points out that their presence in Doma has now been exposed to the Empire. Alphino emphasizes that they can't wait for reinforcements from the Alliance. However, with the Empire's forces currently spread thin, the Doman Liberation Front might have the strength necessary to launch an assault on Doma Castle if the people of Doma would unite under a single banner. Gosetsu concurs, noting that Lord Hien is essential for rallying the people of Doma, whose yearning for freedom has now become evident at last. In the keep of Doma Castle, Xenos prepares to depart Doma. Before taking his leave, however, he forcefully reminds Yotsuyu of her responsibilities and her apparent failure to crush the kingdom's spirit. He grants her one final opportunity to defeat the rebels, leaving her humiliated and seething with a thirst for vengeance against the Warrior of Light. Meanwhile, Estinian, Ishgard's former Azure Dragoon, comes upon a massive unnatural chasm, sensing that Nidhogg's eyes still pose a threat. Resolute, he continues to track their ominous presence, driven by an unyielding determination. Traveling to the Azim Steppe in search of Lord Hien, they are struck by its vast, untamed beauty, where numerous nomadic sailor tribes, a fierce, proud type of Aura, vie for dominance in a delicate balance of power. They encounter Serenia, a close ally of Hien's, and witness an intense confrontation between the Oronir and Dothari tribes, the two most formidable factions. Serena explains that these tribes will soon settle their differences in a grand battle royale known as the Nadam, a contest that determines the steppe's hierarchy and the ruler of the Dawn throne. Serena then leads them to Hien, revealing she found him near death, and that her tribe, the Mole, nursed him back to health. Yugiri and Gosetsu relay the people's resolve to Hien, informing him that they are ready to rise and fight for Doma. Acknowledging their courage, Hien remarks that reclaiming Doma will be far more challenging than simply offering up his life. Nevertheless, he cannot ignore the will of his people, even if their dream seems impossible. Grateful, Hien thanks the Warrior of Light for all he has done, graciously bowing and accepting him and the Scions of the Seventh Dawn as their allies. However, Hien is not yet ready to return to Yangsha, as he plans to rally a sailor army by winning the Nadam as the Mole's champion, repaying the tribe for saving his life. He requests the assistance of the Scions and the Warrior of Light, and they agree. They meet the Mole Elder, who grants them permission to fight alongside the tribe. Although Serena doubts the Mole's tribe chances of victory due to their weakness and small numbers, Hien is confident that winning the Nadam in this way will earn him the respect and support of the other tribes. To prove their worth as warriors, they undergo trials and tame their own flying mounts. Just as they succeed, a contingent from the ruling tribe arrives to escort them to their leader, Magnai, the Oronir Khan, who demands that they swear fealty to him and the son he represents. Hien, ever shrewd, views this as a prime opportunity to scout their rivals for the Nadam, and they reluctantly agree to perform tasks for the Oronir. Hien eagerly learns about their culture, while the adventurer meets Sadu of the Dothari, gaining insight into each tribe's fierce pride and love of battle. Gosetsu is originally skeptical of the Dothari's way of life, but ultimately comes to see the commonalities between their way of life and his way of the samurai, both being willing to die for something greater than themselves. Elsewhere, Lise takes the time to speak with Hien, gaining new perspectives on leading people out of suffering and finding renewed resolve in her fight for the people of Alamigo. With their task complete, the group makes final preparations for the Nadam, and as the battle for supremacy begins, the Warrior of Light fights through a storm of fierce combatants to reach the center point. In a climactic showdown, they fend off assaults from both Magnai and Sadu, ultimately securing the Dawn throne for the Mole and claiming victory in the Nadam against all odds. Before they can celebrate, Grinewat arrives with his forces to destroy the Warrior of Light. But the newly crowned Kagan, with his United Steppe warriors, confronts the enemy head-on. Grinewat is swiftly defeated through the combined efforts of the people of the steppe and flees once more. Hien then calls upon the steppe warriors to join the liberation of Doma. Adhering to their laws, they eagerly agree, ready to demonstrate their battle prowess, as it is in battle their souls shine the brightest. The group returns to Yangsha, where Hien is warmly welcomed by his people and they are reunited with the Scions. Alazay informs them that both the Confederacy and the Blue Kojin have pledged their support, and luckily Xenos is currently away in Gurabania, leaving them an opening to strike. With urgency, Alphino outlines his plan to disable the castle barrier and subdue Yotsuyu. During preparations, Alazay uncovers an Imperial spy disguised as a villager, who warns them that Yotsuyu would rather destroy everything than surrender. At the side of the man, the Warrior of Light is treated to a vision by the Echo, revealing the soldier's part in conscripting Asahi, Yotsuyu's talented younger cousin, to serve the Empire. Meeting back with Hien, the prince proposes flooding the castle to negate the ground forces and trap Yotsuyu in the upper levels without sacrificing their troops. Although Gosetsu initially objects to destroying the castle as it is a sacred symbol of Doma, Hien insists that the heart of the nation is its people and that they can always rebuild the castle. That night, Hien and Gosetsu raise a glass to freedom with the Warrior of Light, inviting Yugiri to step out of the shadows to join them. And so the battle for Doma Castle begins. Lys leads Isse and the citizens on the ground, while Zayla warriors target aerial artillery, attacking from the skies above. Alphino and the shinobi disable the main barrier, allowing the Confederacy to sail in and bombard the castle. Subsequently, the Kojin destroy the castle supports, flooding it and trapping Yotsuyu, who has no other recourse than to watch her castle burn from one of the balconies. The Warrior of Light, Gosetsu and Yugiri advance towards Yotsuyu, but are intercepted by the cybernetic Grinewat, now a berserk killing machine. After a fierce battle, they defeat him and catch up to Hien, who has already confronted Yotsuyu. She recounts her tragic backstory, culminating in her rise as an Imperial spy who delighted in the suffering of her tormentors. In a final act of defiance, she reaches for her gun and fires at Hien, who deflects the bullet and strikes her down, sympathetically promising that he will remember her words. As the castle begins to collapse, Gosetsu holds up a part of the ceiling to save the group. Yotsuyu, barely alive, shoots Gosetsu in the back multiple times, trying to bring them all down with her. Steadfast, the old samurai holds his ground, allowing the others time to escape. Despite the destruction of the castle, the revolution triumphs, resulting in a victorious end to their noble struggle. Not willing to accept Gosetsu's untimely demise, the group scours the castle ruins, but find no trace of him. They notice the floor has collapsed, suggesting he might have been swept downriver. Hien reveals himself to the people of Doma, formally announcing the end of their 25-year occupation and expressing his gratitude for their unwavering resilience. The Scions, seeing their mission accomplished, quietly depart, knowing that the news of Doma's liberation will ignite revolutions elsewhere. They bid farewell to their newfound friends, reassured by Hien's promise of future Doman support in Eorzea. Hien encourages Lys to finish the fight and seize her future, sending Yugiri to aid her. In the royal palace of Alamigo, Xenos rests on his throne, but upon hearing of Yotsuyu's defeat, he executes the messenger in cold blood. Fordola enters, bearing Kryl as a prisoner, and Xenos promotes her for her service. Back in Eorzea, the group is informed of Kryl's capture, and told that Thancred is already searching for her location. At the wall, Arenwald, a half-Garlean, half-Alamigan affiliated with the Scions, apologizes for having failed to protect Kryl from Fordola. He reveals that he too possesses the Echo, albeit a lesser version, allowing him to walk through others' memories. He saw that Xenos personally ordered Kryl's abduction, indicating they want her alive. Reporting back to base, they are thrilled to learn of Doma's success. As the Empire deliberates its next move, Rauban sees an opportunity to strike while their enemy waits for reinforcements. Conrad emphasizes the necessity of total commitment to avoid another catastrophic defeat, dubbing their blitz operation Ralger's Beacon. Their first objective is to seize the bridge of Castellum Veladina, currently held by Fordola and her skulls. The next day, the Warrior of Light joins the ground team in their assault on the bridge. There they clash with Fordola and advance by bluffing their way to victory. Fordola's men fear betrayal by the Ananta Beast Tribe, and the Scions visit Mnago's village, where the Ananta have sent an emissary to the Alliance. The messenger explains that the Imperials quarreled with the Kalyana, the most powerful Ananta tribe, which sided with the Empire. The reason is that Fordola took the Kalyana broodmother's daughter hostage for leverage. When the Imperials lost, a skull then killed the hostage, prompting the broodmother to summon the primal Sri Lakshmi to revive her daughter. The primal's appearance forced the Empire to retreat, but the Kalyana now demand live sacrifices from the other Ananta tribes. Refusing this demand, they now seek the fame's Icon Slayer's help, hoping that the Warrior of Light can slay the primal. Despite the timing, the Scions enter the Kalyana camp and find that the primal revived naught but a soulless husk. They challenge the Lady of Beauty and Bliss, banishing her, but the broodmother remains angry and bereft. Meanwhile, Fordola faces mockery from her peers and reports her failure to Xenos. Instead of killing her, Xenos sees the hatred in her eyes and offers her a chance to transcend her mortal power. She accepts, and Dr. Aulus, a Gallian scientist working under Xenos, prepares for his next inhuman experiment. Returning to the Alliance, they reclaim Alagiri, a former trading hub neglected by the Gallian occupation, and establish a new base of operations. From there, they plan to challenge Specula Imperatoris, a massive triple-tower military installation. Speed is essential, as the nearby Castrum Urbania houses a massive cannon, capable of reaching the site. Under Xenos' watchful eye, Fordola steps out of a radical procedure meant to boost her etheric manipulation by using Kryle's power against her will. Dr. Aulus elaborates that while Gallians are superior in physical and mental prowess, their inability to wield ether has left them at a disadvantage against magic-using races. To compensate, Gallians harnessed ceruleum and created magitech technology. Aulus, however, aspired to re-engineer the Gallian genome for magical abilities, a venture backed solely by Xenos. With Fordola now enhanced, Aulus clears her for active duty. Meanwhile, hidden in the shadows, Thancred discovers Kryle's location. The Resistance and the Alliance launch a coordinated assault on the towers, encountering fierce resistance from the Skulls and Imperials. In Castrum Urbania, Fordola grimly reports that Xenos plans to use the cannon to annihilate the installation, even if it means sacrificing her own troops. As the cannon prepares to fire, Fordola is incapacitated by severe headaches due to her new ether sensitivity. The sudden artillery barrage catches both sides off guard, forcing them to retreat as the main tower collapses, burying many in the rubble. The Scions rush to aid the wounded, finding a mortally wounded Conrad, who names Lys as the new commander of the Resistance, tasking her with leading them to victory and freedom. As the Imperials ready the cannon for another strike, Estinian channels Nidhogg's residual power through his spear, severing the cerulean pipeline and neutralizing the cannon before vanishing. Lys, puzzled by the halted attack, investigates and reports back, realizing that this is their moment to capture Castrum Urbania. Warrior of Light leads a strike team into the facility, dismantling numerous magitech experiments and scientific abominations before confronting Fordola in the control room. Lys accuses Fordola of murdering her own men after they had surrendered. Fordola, though visibly troubled, defends her actions as an effort to uplift Alamigo within the Empire, aiming for eventual equality. Lys, refusing to be swayed, attacks. However, Fordola's eyes flare with newfound power, allowing her to predict and counter their moves effortlessly, even besting Alisei. Despite her advantage, she withdraws, informing the adventurer that Xenos awaits him in the castle for the royal hunt. With the costume effectively under Alliance control, they take a brief respite. Rauban shares memories with Lys and the Warrior of Light, recounting how her father, Curtis, led the uprising against the Mad King of Alamigo, inspiring young warriors like Rauban and Ilbert with his creed, liberty or death. Lys, embodying her father's ideals, recognizes that liberty for Alamigo must encompass all its citizens, even those like Fordola who despise them, and the Ananta who fear them. Stepping into her new role, Lys dons a traditional dress once worn by her sister Ida, symbolically carrying her spirit into the final battle. She requests a sparring match with the Warrior of Light to prepare for the imminent showdown. Warrior of Light gladly obliging her request. Afterwards, Lys reports in as the Alliance leaders converge with their forces to secure the royal palace, poised for the decisive battle to liberate Alamigo. Before they infiltrate the palace, they are intercepted by Urianger, who proposes a plan to neutralize Fordola's new abilities by using Moenbreeder's etheric siphon to strip her of some of her power. Thancred leads the team into the research lab where Krile is held and Fordola awaits. Using the etheric siphon, they manage to stagger Fordola long enough to subdue her. Lys, though burning with desire to kill Fordola, spares her life, declaring that such vengeance has no place in the Alamigo she envisions. After a decisive strike from Lys, Alphinaud rushes to free Krile from her pod. Relieved, Krile thanks Alphinaud for his timely rescue, having had faith it would come to her. Taking Fordola prisoner, she taunts them, warning them that Xenos remains a formidable threat, with a power akin to that of an icon. Back at the base, Krile explains that the Imperials are creating enhanced beings, called the Resonant, confirming Urianger's theory that they have reverse-engineered the Echo. Meanwhile, word arrives that the Imperials are deploying the Lupin, the Wolfman beast tribe from Doma. Alphinaud believes he can negotiate with them to stand down. Confronting the Lupin, Alphinaud informs them that Hien is alive and has liberated Doma. Initially skeptical, they reconsider after a battle with the Warrior of Light. Willing to take a chance, they agree to betray the Imperials in the upcoming conflict. The Alliance forces, bolstered by magic and might, breach Alamigo's main gates, initiating the final battle. Hien and the Doman allies arrive, making good on their promise to their friends by providing crucial aerial support. As they fight their way into the royal palace, they face Xenos, who unveils his secret weapon, a captured Shinryu, restrained by advanced technology. Xenos, admiring the primal born from Alamigan despair, explains that the Warrior of Light has not fully mastered the power of the Echo. He reveals that the Echo can bind an icon to one's will, declares that he too is a resonant. Therefore, unlike his forefathers, he would not see the icons exterminated, but rather dominated by the likes of himself. Demonstrating his dominance, Xenos shatters Shinryu's prison and merges with the primal. Despite his augmented form and artificial echo, Xenos is ultimately defeated by the Warrior of Light. Experiencing true defeat for the first time, Xenos revels in the unfamiliar sensation as he experiences transcendent joy. Believing he will never feel such intensity again, he takes his own life, bidding farewell with a decisive strike delivered by his own blade. His lifeless body embraced by a bed of flowers in the royal garden. The group, stunned by this development, confirms Xenos' death amid mixed emotions. Rauban focuses on their victory, while Hien urges Lys to stand tall for her people. Together with their friends and allies, the combined forces of the Alliance, the Doma Liberation Front, and the Alamigan Resistance, they celebrate their hard-won freedom and ending 2 decades of tyranny. Following the triumphant celebrations, the formidable task of rebuilding begins. High atop the royal palace, Estinian uncovers the eyes of Nidhogg, the vile catalysts used to summon Shinryu. With a powerful strike, he shatters them, declaring the end of the dragon's hateful legacy once and for all. Meanwhile, Elidibus confronts Emperor Varys, surprised by his indifference to his son's death. Varys, cold and detached, explains that his monstrous offspring was never destined for the throne, and expresses deep mistrust of the Ascians. Unperturbed, Elidibus assures him that trust will come in time. Removing his mask, he reveals a face so startling it pierces the Emperor's stoic facade. Back with the Scions, Lys expresses profound gratitude for their unwavering support in realizing her dreams. She announces her resignation from the Scions to devote herself entirely to Alamigo. Her comrades, understanding and supportive, reaffirm their friendship and wish her well on her new journey. As the sun rises over a free Alamigo, the sun similarly shines on a distant island, where Gosetsu fishes to sustain himself. Alive and well, he is joined by a fellow survivor, Yotsuyu. Hatch 4.1 The Legend Returns. As Alamigo sets forth on its path to renewal, Lys spearheads the formation of a council to guide the nation's future. Seizing a rare moment of respite, Warrior of Light, Arenwald, and Alphino embark on an adventure quest to uncover the fabled treasure trove of the Mad King, the tyrant who once ruled Garabania before the Imperial conquest. Following a trail of cryptic clues, they stumble upon the drowned city of Scala, a macabre domain haunted by the undead remnants of the Mad King's dark reign. Successfully recovering the treasure, they return to Lys, offering the wealth to support Alamigo's reconstruction efforts. Upon their return, they find Alamigo in chaos, as the populace riots, demanding vengeance against Fordola, the infamous leader of the Skulls, now imprisoned in the capital. Rauban addresses the furious crowd, challenging their desire for endless retribution. His poignant words resonate, and the crowd reluctantly disperses. The Warrior of Light and Arenwald visit Fordola in her cell, where the Echo reveals her tragic past. Shunned by her people for her family's imperial ties, never fully accepted by the Empire because of her heritage, the haunting memory of her father's death while protecting her from an enraged mob lingers. Fordola in turn sees the Warrior of Light's hardships and is awestruck by his resilience. Arenwald notes that Fordola's uncontrolled Echo bombards her with the emotions and memories of every angry Alamigan, pushing the group to delve deeper into the experiment that bestowed her powers upon her. Later, the Warrior of Light is summoned to Uldar by Sultana Nanamo. She confides that, despite Rauban's intention to return to Uldar, she knows his heart lies in his homeland. Desiring to understand her kingdom's troubles, she decides to venture incognito through Thanalan, seeking the wisdom needed to aid Alamigan refugees. Guided by the Warrior of Light, she consults Godbert Mandeville, who warns her that aiding refugees without profit could invite sabotage and resentment. Acknowledging her limitations in business, Nanamo requests the Warrior of Light to arrange a meeting with Lord Lolorito of the East Aldenard Trading Company. Convening in secret at the Waking Sands, they devise a plan. Uldar will fund a settlement and business in Alamigo in exchange for a share of the profits. Returning to Garabania, the Warrior of Light attends a summit of the nation's leaders. Unexpectedly, the Kalyana tribe requests entry, asserting their right to participate. Rauban and the Warrior of Light agree, provided they leave their crystals behind. The summit, led by Lys, begins with discussions on the nation's future. However, the Kalyana disrupt the proceedings by summoning Lakshmi with hidden crystals. The Warrior of Light and Arenwald valiantly defend the summit, but it is Lys who frees Fordola, whose artificial echo helps them turn the tide of battle. After Lakshmi's defeat, a village elder expresses gratitude to Fordola, despite lingering resentment that refuses to fade away completely. Fordola returns to her cell, tears streaming down her face. In the royal garden, Rauban confides in the Warrior of Light about his future. Nanamo arrives, formally relieving him of his duties and appointing Pippin as his successor, freeing Rauban to focus on rebuilding Alamigo. He expresses deep gratitude for the opportunity to aid his homeland. In Kugane, Gosetsu and Yotsuyu, now known as Suyu, struggle to return to Doma without any funds. Gosetsu, having sold his sword, is exasperated to see Suyu using the proceeds to buy dango, underscoring their dire situation. Meanwhile in the Empire, soldiers scoff at rumors of Xenos' death, insisting he is merely recuperating. A figure in white armor watches from afar, hinting at deeper intrigue and mystery. Patch 4.2 Rise of a New Sun. The Warrior of Light receives an urgent message from Hancock in Kugane, who tells them that two travelers matching the description of Gosetsu and Yotsuyu have been spotted in the city. Teaming up with Yugiri, they race to the Ruby Sea and find Gosetsu and Tsuyu, as she now calls herself, under fierce attack by Imperial forces. After driving off the attackers, Gosetsu reveals that Tsuyu has lost all memory of her past and now has the innocent demeanor of a child. Though skeptical, Alice and Yugiri agree to return to Doma with them to seek Lord Hien's counsel. Upon their arrival, Hien carefully considers the situation. While the Empire might still pursue Tsuyu for the secrets she might hold, her amnesia renders her seemingly harmless. However, the people of Doma have not forgotten her many crimes. To avoid inciting unrest, Hien decides to keep Tsuyu hidden. Their deliberations are interrupted by the arrival of an Imperial airship, signaling for a peaceful encounter, a rare gesture in these turbulent times. Intrigued, Hien instructs Yugiri to respond in kind. The Imperial visitor is none other than Asahi, Yotsuyu's step-brother, who was raised in Garlemald, but still seems to be deeply connected to his Doman roots. Asahi claims to be a part of a political faction within the Empire, aiming to curb its expansionist policies and seek peace negotiations. He explains that the current Emperor's primary goal is the eradication of icons, and that peace would make attaining this goal easier. Asahi's arguments resonate with the Scions, as he acknowledges the vicious cycle of summoning and conflict. However, Hien remains ever cautious. To build trust, Asahi proposes a prisoner exchange, Doman conscripts for Imperial captives. Hien requests time to consider. Meanwhile, the Warrior of Light and Yugiri show Asahi around Doma, exposing him to its dire state. Asahi laments the suffering of the land and even helps defend the local children from a rogue Red Kujin attack who've strayed too far from their usual territory. After careful reflection, Hien agrees to the prisoner exchange with one condition. If Tsuyu's memory does not return to her by the time of the exchange, she is to remain in Doma. Asahi requests a private meeting with Tsuyu, and later confirms her amnesia is genuine. With that, the exchange details are finalized. The next day, as Asahi prepares to depart Yangsha, he requests a private audience with the Warrior of Light. What begins as a seemingly innocuous conversation quickly turns sinister, as Asahi's demeanor shifts to one of deranged rage. He reveals his fanatical devotion to Xenos, vowing vengeance for Alamigo. Asahi mocks the Warrior of Light, warning that any attack would jeopardize Doma's fragile peace. The Garleans depart, and the Warrior of Light informs his allies of Asahi's true nature. Despite the unsettling revelation, Hien remains committed to the exchange, hoping to bring more of his people home. Meanwhile, Tsuyu gazes into a mirror given to her by Asahi, lost in contemplation of her true identity. In the heart of the Empire, a doctor checks on his patient, who angrily dismisses him. The patient being Xenos, who is somehow miraculously alive and burning with renewed purpose. Patch 4.3 Under the Moonlight. Due to his advanced age and the toll of countless battles, Gosetsu has sustained injuries and is now recuperating under Tsuyu's care. Hien suggests that the Warrior of Light, along with the twins Alice and Alphino, visit the venerable samurai to help raise his spirits. During their visit, Gosetsu reminisces about his youth and expresses a longing for persimmons from the nearby village of Namai. Inspired, Tsuyu ventures out from the safety of the Doman enclave to find one. The Warrior of Light, Yugiri, and Hien track her down, but not before the villagers recognize her. Hien pleads with them to understand that Tsuyu has lost her memories and is now harmless. The sight of familiar faces stirs fragmented memories within Tsuyu, and she begs for forgiveness. Moved by her fear and Hien's words, the villagers relent and even offer her the persimmon she sought. The group then heads to Castrum Fluminis, a former Imperial base in the Yangsha region, to meet with Asahi and demonstrate Tsuyu's memory loss. Asahi, however, has his own scheme and brings along their parents, who were responsible for much of Tsuyu's childhood suffering. The sight of them causes Tsuyu further distress as fragmented memories begin to surface, even though they do not fully restore her past. Asahi, seemingly giving up on his ploy, agrees to proceed with the prisoner exchange at the island fortress. Before leaving, he whispers to Tsuyu that she will rejoin them soon, leaving the Imperials to depart with a sinister undertone. That night, during a discussion about the day's events, a servant bursts in, announcing that Tsuyu has gone missing again. The Warrior of Light finds Tsuyu's parents dead, and using the echo, sees the events unfold. Yotsuyu's memories had returned, and feeling guilty for Gosetsu's kindness, she attempted to end her life, until her parents appeared. Her mother, unaware of the memory loss, berates her, while her father sees an opportunity to sell her beauty for profit. Yotsuyu, realizing the depth of their cruelty, kills them both. Asahi, watching from the shadows, is pleased with the outcome and leaves with Yotsuyu. The Warrior of Light reports this to Hien, who realizes Asahi's duplicity. They plan to take precautions for the prisoner exchange. Hien assigns Alphino and Yuyiri to scout Castrum Fluminis and determine escape routes. Meanwhile, he asks Alizé and the Warrior of Light to negotiate with the Confederacy for a larger ship to transport the prisoners. The pirates agree, swayed by Hien's humility and the prospect of bolstering their numbers with returning conscripts. At the prisoner exchange, Hien notices suspicious crates, but Asahi claims they are gifts for Doma's reconstruction. The charade ends when Yotsuyu, now fully restored to her former self, demands submission, proclaiming herself the rightful ruler of Doma. Hien rejects her, declaring her authority void. Asahi reveals the crates are filled with crystals and triggers a summoning. Tsuyu transforms into the primal Tsukuyomi, the goddess of the moon. In the chaos, the Warrior of Light battles the mad goddess, while the others evacuate the prisoners. After Tsukuyomi's defeat, Asahi returns to shoot his weakened sister, reiterating that the summoning nullifies the peace treaty. His gloating is cut short when Yotsuyu, with her last strength, conjures ethereal blades that impale him, fulfilling her final desire for revenge. Gosetsu, arriving with the group, mourns Yotsuyu's fate. Meanwhile, Pilus Maxima, Asahi's second in command, approaches Hien. Maxima, still committed to peace, wishes to proceed with the prisoner exchange despite all that has happened. The Domans reunite with their loved ones, and Gosetsu, now with a shaved head, announces his intention to go on a pilgrimage to pray for the souls lost to suffering. Hien thanks him for his lifelong service. The twins and the Warrior of Light return to Valgo's Reach to inform Lys of the troubling news that Xenos might be alive. Thancred suggests checking Xenos' tomb, and as they find it empty, it raises their suspicion of Asian possession. Meanwhile, an unknown resistance soldier observes from the shadows. Later, this soldier kills a superior officer before taking to the skies in a stolen air drone. Elsewhere, Alphino aboard an Imperial airship with Maxima is attacked while in the air. They crash in The Burn, a desolate, ether-depleted desert. Surrounded by enemies, they are saved by a mysterious Gallian wielding a gunblade, who claims to hunt Asians and offers his aid, introducing himself only as the Shadow Hunter. With no other option, Alphino and the Imperials join him. Patch 4.4 Prelude in Violet. In Alamigo, Thancred briefs them on the escalating situation, telling them how some subjugated provinces have been inspired by Doma and Gurabanian's rebellions to rise up against the Empire with mixed outcomes, the Dalmascan capital having been destroyed in retaliation. He also confirms their fears that the revived Xenos is in fact an Asian inhabiting the dead prince's body. Even more troubling, there has been no word from Alphino except a brief transmission mentioning The Burn. Gathering their allies, the group ventures into The Burn. Though they find no trace of Alphino, they uncover evidence of a conflict between Imperial factions, including the elite royal guards. Alizé fears the worst, that the Emperor has her brother, but Hien and the Warrior of Light urge caution. Yugiri suggests returning to Doma, leaving the shinobi to continue the search. Back in Doma, Hien meets with a visiting dignitary, Lys, who invites Hien to a summit of the Eorzean Alliance to discuss the Ascian threat and formally welcome new allies into the fold. Hien agrees, but insists on securing Doma's safety first. Lys understands and assures him they will set the summit date when Hien is ready. Hien then shares his vision of forming an alliance with the neighboring nations, the Confederacy, the Azim Steppe tribes, and even Kugane and Dalmasca. Their first stop for negotiations is the Azim Steppe. Hien recounts an ancient Mol fable about a stranger who used a shard of Nama's power to raise a ruined earth to the sky. Y'shtola suggests this refers to the Aziz La and Dalamud. They meet Sirena of the Mol, who directs them to the House of the Crooked Coin, a sacred site. However, entering without permission would alienate the tribes. Hien decides to seek the tribe's favor, starting with the Dothril. Despite initial reluctance, Hien and the Warrior of Light meet Sadu, the Dothril leader. She agrees to the alliance on one condition: a duel with the Warrior of Light. The intense battle draws Magnai of the Oronir, who insists on deciding the alliance's fate as Nama's protector. Y'shtola and Hien block his interference, resulting in two epic battles. Ultimately, the Warrior of Light and their allies prevail, securing access to the sacred site and the allegiance of the Dothril and Oronir tribes. Magnai, intrigued by Y'shtola, is quickly rebuffed when she mockingly calls him Little Son. The group returns to the Mall, who also agree to join the alliance, hoping the lesser tribes will follow. At the House of the Crooked Coin, Y'shtola reactivates an ancient Allagan device, restoring ether flow to the burn and enhancing regional defenses. With Orthar's security bolstered, Hien agrees to attend the Eorzean Summit in Alamigo. At the summit, leaders discuss strategies to combat the Empire and the Ascians. Thancred proposes a propaganda campaign to sow doubt within the Empire by suggesting the Crown Prince is possessed. As discussions progress, the Scions are struck by a mysterious force. The Warrior of Light is plunged into a dark void, where a voice warns of an impending wave of light that will consume all life, unless history changes. The plea to throw wide the gates ends with Thancred collapsing into a coma. Rushing back to the Rising Stones, the Scions consult Urianger, who confirms he too heard the voice. He reveals that the strange etheric voids Y'shtola found in Othard are appearing worldwide. As they discuss this, the voice calls out again, and both Y'shtola and Urianger fall unconscious. Desperate, Alizé takes the Warrior of Light to visit Gabu, a young kobold battling primal possession. Seeing Gabu struggle gives Alizé a glimmer of hope, as she confides her fear to the Warrior of Light, finding solace in his support. In the Imperial capital, the Ascian-possessed Xenos converses with the Emperor, revealing himself as Elidibus. He offers the Emperor the full might of the Empire to crush Alamigo. The Emperor's silence provokes Elidibus, who sarcastically bids his father farewell, hoping to dispel his doubts. Alone, the Emperor is taunted by the voice of Solus van Galvus, the Emperor's founder and an Ascian, who mocks his indecision and reiterates the Empire's true purpose: to maintain the balance of light and dark. The Emperor, defiant, shoots at Solus, but the Ascian reappears unharmed, continuing his mockery before vanishing. Deep in Imperial territory, Shadowhunter and Alphino arrive at a resistance camp to find everyone dead without a fight. Shadowhunter identifies the work of Black Rose, a deadly Imperial bioweapon. They agree this bears the Ascian's mark and proceed cautiously. Patch 4.5 A Requiem for Heroes. As the comatose Scions remain unresponsive, Alizé's anxiety begins to mount. Kryl arrives to help, examining Urianger and Y'shtola, and concludes that their ether, their very souls, has been extracted. Kryl suggests they trace this etheric trail, much like they did to find Thancred during the Dragon Song War, but to that end they need Matoya's crystal eye once more. Matoya, upon learning that Y'shtola is involved, willingly lends the eye. Kryl traces the ethereal trails, only to find they abruptly end, as if severed. This troubling discovery suggests the soul are still out there, somewhere. Suddenly, Alice receives an urgent message, telling her that a group of Imperial Populares, including Maxima, has defected to Alamigo. In Alamigo, Alice urgently questions Maxima about Alphinaud, and Maxima explains that Shadowhunter let them out of the burn before parting ways, with Alphinaud choosing to stay with Shadowhunter. Maxima also brings alarming news. The Empire is deploying alchemical weapons, capable of annihilating entire armies, and is marching west towards Alamigo. Rauban and Lys plan to delay the invasion through negotiations, and send Alice and the Warrior of Light to inform Hien in Doma. In Doma, Hien unveils a new alliance comprising the Confederacy, the Sailor of the Steppe, the Kojin, Dalmasca, and the Naksha. He invites Alice and the Warrior of Light to witness the testing of the Allagan barrier in the burn, suggesting it be named Sarius Wall. The test is successful, repelling an Imperial flyer. Shadowhunter emerges from the ship, carrying a comatose Alphinaud. Alice is devastated. The Warrior of Light recognizes Shadowhunter as Gaius van Baelsar, the Black Wolf. Gaius reveals his quest to hunt Asians since the fall of Castrum Meridianum. He shares crucial information, telling them that the black-masked Asians serve the red-masked ones, with La Habrea, Elidibus, and Emmet Selch being the highest ranked from the source. Gaius and Alphinaud disable the Black Rose factory, discovering a cloning facility with replicas of Emperor Solus. Gaius departs, leaving Alphinaud in their care. Meanwhile, Emperor Varys oversees a new Black Rose facility as they prepare for the invasion of Alamigo. Varys tries to remind Solus of the harm their course of action could do to the Empire, much like the civil war which ensued upon his first departure. However, Solus reveals that the civil war following his alleged death was orchestrated by him to create chaos. The Warrior of Light and Hien attend the Eosian Alliance's negotiations with the Empire, where Emperor Varys himself is present. The talks are tense, with Varys deflecting criticisms and proposing that uniting under the Empire is the only way to withstand the Asians. However, the Alliance, realizing his plans involves more calamities, ultimately rejects his offer. With battle lines drawn and peace off the table, the Warrior of Light helps repel the Empire's initial assault. After the battle, Alice suggests pressing the advantage, but they are struck by the mysterious voice again, and Alice collapses. The Warrior of Light takes her back to the Rising Stones, while Xenos, possessed by Elidibus, prepares to join the conflict. The Warrior of Light meets Rauban to strategize, when the mysterious voice pierces their mind, urging contact. They learn Xenos has breached the defenses and rush to confront him. Lys, Hien, and Yugiri engage the possessed Xenos to buy time, but he overwhelms them. The Warrior of Light faces the possessed Xenos and initially defeats Elidibus, but the Asian revives, turning the tide. Just as he is about to strike, the warrior is transported to a strange ethereal realm and meets an enigmatic figure who warns of an impending oblivion and invites them to the First, a shard of the Source separate from their own. The Warrior of Light awakens in Ishgard, saved by Estinian. Emmerich explains that Xenos and the Emperor have retreated, creating a stalemate. Back at the Rising Stones, the Warrior of Light recounts recent events to Tataru and the remaining Scions. Tataru theorizes that the enigmatic figure might be connected to the Scion's condition and urges the warrior to accept the invitation to travel to the First. Meanwhile, the true Xenos, now a nameless soldier, continues his quest to find the Warrior of Light, urging them to grow stronger for the next encounter. The Warrior of Light stands on the brink of a new adventure. Gazing at the Crystal Tower, a voice ringing out across time and space, beckoning him forward. And so ends the complete story of Final Fantasy XIV, Stormblood. I hope you like our retelling and that you'll continue watching as the story continues in the next expansion, Shadowbringers. Please subscribe and click the bell and bye! Take care!